Thanks for being here. Um, Today, Dr. Chui Chui Tan will talk to us about global product strategy and culturalization for product managers. We're really glad to have you all. We're really glad to have you guys all here. And thanks for being here and sharing your experience with us. So a little introduction for myself. I'm your host just for today. I'm Isaac. I'm from America, from Colorado, if you guys know where that is. And I'm studying finance and marketing at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I'm here interning for Productized for about 6 more weeks, the rest of this week, and then 6 more weeks. So let's take a quick moment to talk about Productized. So Productized does many different things that I'm sure you guys, a lot of you guys know. But the most public thing we do is our yearly conference, and the very first one dates all the way back to 2015. And this right here is a photo, actually, of the very first edition. So as you can see, it has grown a lot since. Here's another one of the very, I guess, them preparing for one of the very first conferences. There's Andre in the middle. And then, like I mentioned, the event's been happening every year since, always driven by passion, of course. Everyone who speaks at the conference, to everyone who attends, deeply cares about driving innovation and product management, which is what makes the conference so cool, in my opinion, because you're around people and listening to people who care just as much about what they do as you do, which is I'd say, a very important thing. And over the years, we've welcomed some iconic thought leaders like Teresa Torres, Rich Mironov, Radhika Dutt, Melissa Perry, and many others. And this year, we're welcoming exceptional leaders such as Dr. Tan herself, Bruce McCarthy, David Pereira, and many more. And then also, we have a YouTube where we post a lot of things, including webinars like this, podcasts, and also we've made a playlist called 10 Years and 10 Talks. And this is on the YouTube channel, so definitely go check that out. It's just a playlist of a lot of the different talks from previous conferences. There's some very interesting stuff in that. And I'll actually paste the YouTube link to that in the chat in a second after I'm done presenting, so you guys can go check that out. All right. Now we'll just give you some numbers about Productized. We've had over 4,000 participants in all the different events that we've hosted, and over 1,000 hours of product training. We've had a wide variety of nationalities attending our conferences, which is really cool. And not just our conferences, also our workshops and master classes. This is really cool because it offers a very wide range of different views and opinions, which is a really good thing at conferences. And then we have hosted more than 100 workshops and events. Also, we have hosted more than 100 different conference talks on a wide variety of topics, and we have a community of thousands of product lovers. This year, we'll be welcoming people from big name companies like Netflix, Facebook, and Google, but also from smaller teams and independents, as you can see, like Mango, SAP, Zalando, stuff, companies like that, because everyone's welcome at Productized, and there's something for everyone. So this year, it's the 10th edition. It's going to happen from October 15th to October 17th. October 15th is the Leaders Day, which is where, it's a lead called the Leadership Forum for leaders in product management to come together and share ideas and really have a hands-on think tank, I'd like to call it. And then the 16th and the 17th is the actual conference day. 16th is workshops, which is another hands-on kind of day where you get to really bounce ideas with each other. And then 17th is the talks day, where there's 11 different inspiring talks on a wide variety of topics. And then this year, we're focusing on the big question, how do we create change together? So definitely tune into the website and if you want to find out more about that. For the venue this year, we're hosting the conference at I'm not really good at Portuguese, so I'm just going to say FIL Meeting Center. It's a new spot for us, and we're very excited about it because it's big space. It's right near the river, so it's definitely a state-of-the-art venue. It's going to be a great place. As you can see from the picture, it's really cool. And then, as I said earlier, we have 12 hands-on workshops on the 16th of October and 11 inspiring talks and panels on the 17th of October. The space is perfect for connecting. We're expecting hundreds of product people, so lots of chances to meet, chat, and share ideas. There'll be great coffee from real baristas and plenty of time to enjoy during the breaks that we offer throughout the conference, and also the after party as well, which I'll get into. So one of the other selling points I'd say is a cool vibe. The atmosphere and the vibe is professional and serious, but still relaxed. And it's very fun to be at because there's art and music and drinks as well. So you're not just there for professional reasons. You're also there to meet people and have a good time. And then, as I said earlier, there's an after party. So definitely stay for the best part with local craft brews and all that. Yep. And then the tickets, let's get into it. There's multiple ticket options more on our website too, if you're interested to different days, different offers. But as you can see, the one on the left offers you a 1 day conference just to the talks. You can save 25% right now because we have a summer sale going. And then on the right, you can see a 2 day ticket to the workshops and the talks if you're interested in the workshops as well. And then we also offer a promotion for if you buy 5 or more tickets, you get an additional 20% off. As you can see, it would be like buying 5 for the price of 4. And then, yeah, now, before Chui Chui takes it away, I'm going to introduce her a little bit. Dr. Chui Chui Tan is a globally respected expert in culturalization and global product strategy. With decades of experience advising top global brands, Chui Chui empowers product teams to bridge cultural divides and deliver products that thrive internationally. She also wrote this book, Research. Let me see if I can get it in. Well, it's on the slides. It's research for global growth that dives into the complexities of international markets and cultural dynamics. So definitely go check that out if you're interested. I read the back. It seems like an interesting read. So with that, I'll stop sharing and hand it over to Dr. Tan. And I encourage you all to tune in and take notes. And real quick before I sign off for a little bit, just want to remind you guys that we have a Q&A at the end. So definitely stick around for that if you have any questions. And without further ado, Dr. Chui Chui Tan.
Thank you. Oops. Let me share my screen. Can you see it okay? Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yep, looks good.
So thanks everyone to be here. I think it's 7 o'clock at your end now, so it's late. So thanks for joining us. So a quick introduction about myself. So who is Chui Chui? And I actually originally from Malaysia, but I spent half of my life in Malaysia and half of my life in the UK now. And why did I mention this? Because I do believe that it's actually distill who I am and why am I doing this job as well. Because in Malaysia, I don't know how much you know about Malaysia, it's actually a multi ethnicity groups that you have Malay, Chinese, and Indians, and a lot of culture blended in one countries. And I come to the UK and I kind of work with people from around the world. So it's really exciting to see how the different culture is actually working. So for the last 17 years, I have been helping companies in different industries navigating cultural nuances and complexities over 50 countries, and to help them to choose the right markets to launch and also to focus on and to improve their global expansions. And that could touch on products or any other aspects of the business. And one thing that stood out from my experience is that understanding local culture and context is actually often the make or break factor for a success in global markets. So not understanding the markets often led to a lot of big companies actually failed and have to exit a market. For example, Uber in Southeast Asia, they have to leave the market, the regions, and sell their share to to Grab, which is the local competitors, and McDonald's everywhere, but not in Bolivia, and then Starbucks in Australia as well. And most recently is last summer, Sephora actually have to leave South Korea after facing operation losses for a few years. And it's quite interesting, right? Because South Korea, as you know, is very good in cosmetic and things like that. But Sephora actually got it wrong in many different aspects. That's why they have to leave. But today, I will talk about this in some of my talks examples. But today, I want to give you another examples that you are actually familiar with, the brand, which is Netflix. Netflix in India, they are doing very well at the moment or for the last few years. But at the beginning, after they launch and a few years after they launch, they actually struggle to grow. And in fact, the co-founder actually admitted that it's very frustrating that they couldn't get the subscribers growth momentum going in India. And here are actually a few reasons that contribute to that, as you can see. So when they launch in the market, the most obvious issues is their pricing. So the pricing is not just the cost itself, but actually run deeper into that. When they just launched and several years after that, and Netflix, their premium pricing strategy was positioned as luxury service, but the market is actually where the consumers are actually very price sensitive. So it became a major barrier to them. At one point, actually, 1 month of Netflix standard subscriptions is actually cost more than a full year of competitors like Disney Plus or Hotstar's and VIP and Prime Video as well. And the other thing that they actually didn't get it right is the content. The content localizations is one of their missteps. So Indian audiences actually have diverse linguistic preferences, like you have Hindi, Tamil, Bengali or Telugu, and so on. But in the first few years, Netflix actually invested very heavily in original Indian content and focused very much on English and Hindi only. So that is a mismatch happening there. And then mobile. They underestimated the importance of mobile first viewing in India. So in most Indian consumers or users actually access entertainment or media through their smartphones with their limited data plan. But Netflix actually have a very high quality streaming services and actually taking a lot of data, and also they actually require big screens as well. So that is actually a big thing because they eventually moved to mobile mobile only plan that actually increased quite heavily, quite a lot on their growth. And then the last examples I wanted to give is their payment method. So the Netflix actually was focusing a lot on credit card subscriptions. But in India, a lot of people actually don't have credit cards and they prefer cash or digital wallets, while their competitors actually offering that not only the different payment method, but also prepaid plans where people can actually pay not using monthly subscriptions, but actually paid as they go along and so on. These are just a few examples where actually Netflix got it wrong at the beginning because they didn't understand the market and the context and ecosystem. But then they actually turn it around quite well. They actually introduced, like I said earlier, mobile only lower price plans. They have investment on the regional and original Indian content to cater for different linguistic needs. They have more payment methods and payment plans and so on. So their growth is become better. And if you're not Netflix, I work with them before as well. They actually invest very heavily in research, in data and analytics these days because they want to get it right, and they actually have been got it right in most markets as they grow. So for me, cultural data and insights are actually very important ingredients in all these instances when you want to actually create a products or services that resonate with your local audiences or local customers. That's what brought me to write the books, and especially to kind of want to showcase bring clarity to complexities of global expansions by bridging the three things: cultural, strategy, and people together. When I say people, it could be people in the local environment or it could be people within organizations. I will tell you more about that, what that means, what I meant about people within organizations on here. So before we start, I just want to start asking the questions of what is culture? Because we tend to use the word culture a lot. We often say, oh, our product needs to fit into local culture, or this culture is very different, Japanese culture is very different. But what does that mean? What do we mean by that culture? The meaning for me is actually changes depending on the context. So for example, in organizations, the culture is the organization share values or practices and beliefs and shapes how people work together. And then you have pop culture like music, fashions, or movies, and so on. And you have subcultures as well, like people with smaller groups, they actually gather together. Like, for example, you have skateboarders and people who like certain things, gamers or something. But when we talk about adapting to local culture in business context, what's the best way for us to illustrate culture and how do we make it more whole? So to me, this is culture. Culture is everything around us. It has many layers, many facets, and it deeply embedded into our daily life, and it influences everything about us. And for me, it's not just about the things that we do or we interact with, but it's also the context itself. So when I was running a workshop a few months ago, and I talk about some political sensitivity and so on, and attendees were asking, is that geopolitical issues rather than a culture? But for me, culture is the whole thing because it's actually covering the whole context that the people actually live within and interact and so on. So it could also including the political sensitivity, the infrastructure, the economy, and so on. So that is what I meant about culture. And when talk about adapting to local culture and so on, a lot of time companies tend to use the word localization. I have localized we have localized our product. And very often what they meant is they have translated the language or they have changed the currency and that is it. So that's why I tend to avoid to use the word localizations. I actually use culturalizations because it's more whole and is covering the whole holistic and ecosystem of a market and the people within that. And localizations normally is one of things. You change the language, you change the currency, and that is it. Culturalization is more evolved. It's more like you have to continuous understanding it and make changes to it and so on. So it's more in depth. Although this word's actually not isn't in the dictionary, but it's very self-explanatory, right? I say culturalization, so you do know what that means as well. So I want to give you a few examples why understanding culture or the context itself is so important in the business sense or in the product sense. So if I tell you that in South Korea, almost all streaming services like Melon or Spotify, they actually have a cheaper premium tier without the download features. But why? If we kind of step back, why actually they created that is because in South Korea, their internet connection is so quick, so fast, available anywhere. So downloads become not necessary. It's not something that they needed. So all these streaming services actually created a plan where it's cheaper and it doesn't include downloads because that is what fits into the local context as well. And then in Southeast Asia, Grab, I mentioned about Grab, which is the competitors of Uber earlier. They actually have built a credit scoring model, not using how we spend money, the loans you have, and so on, which we are familiar with, but it's actually using their ride frequency and in-app habits as well. Why do they do that? That is because many people within in Southeast Asia actually have no formal credit record. So credit score actually doesn't even exist or doesn't work for them. And then you in Brazil, Nubank actually optimized onboarding for low bandwidth and unstable networks. Why? Because there are a lot of people actually rely on low ends of phones and intermittent internet as well. So that becomes very important to them. So that is all the reason. That is, you can see all this is not localization tricks like you change language and everything. It's go deeper. It's a decisions, business decisions that are actually shaped by culture or the context. So but culturalization can sound really overwhelming, like because it's so much to cover. Where do we even start? To make it more basic and easier to understand and less overwhelming, I actually created these three levels of culturalizations. So there are three levels. I'm not going to go through in detail so much, but in my talk or workshop, I probably will give more information about what that means. But level one, first of all, is to respect. I call it respect establishment. So you want to avoid offense. So, for example, you want to avoid cultural or religious or geopolitical mistakes that will actually create backlash or alienate some audiences. If you fail here, you are not making you're not just making like marketing products mistake or marketing mistakes. You actually might be damaging your trust and credit. So I give you a few examples like Dolce and Gabbana actually faced public outcry in China after they actually released an ad scenes like mocking Chinese culture. They kind of get a Chinese lady who actually used chopstick to eat pizza, to eat spaghetti and things like that. It was very inappropriate and insensitive. And then Zara also have a featured once featured a striped children's shirts with the yellow stars that unintentionally actually created kind of resembled the Holocaust prison uniforms. So they quickly pull it from the market and kind of apologize for that as well. So these are just examples of like you have to show respect. It's about earning permissions to be in the room in the country before you actually trying to even connect. There are a lot of examples in the digital world as well, but this is just a quick example so you can see what that means. And then the second level, I call it cultural expectation. So this is about fitting in. So you get to stay in a room. Now what? You want to fit in. So this is about adjusting everyday customer interactions to reflect the local norms, the behaviors and expectations. Again, it's not just about translation, but translation is one of them. Why is it matter here is because if the experience feels foreign or clunky, your local customer users won't feel like you're actually creating something for them. This is the most basic, like for example, could be currency, could be naming orders. Like for example, you first name and last name in Malaysia, I'm Tan Chui Chui because last name come first. In the UK or Western world, I'm Chui Chui Tan. So it's kind of how you capture that on a form so people don't read and they provide the information that then you address them in the wrong way. So there are a lot of other things that numbering and payment methods like we talk about. So these are the basic things that you think is quite small, like unimportant, but it's actually the basic experience that your local users will actually expecting to have. This is not even you do anything extra. This is the basic you need to give them so that they trust your product that speaks their language and match to their rhythms as well. And then you have the third level. The third level is now where I call it experience enhancement. You want to stand out from the crowd. You want to go beyond adaptations. You actually want to create something that resonates and connects. So the three examples I gave you earlier, like the streaming services in South Korea, that's one of them, right? But there are a lot of other things as well. This is very important because this is where true loyalty and brand loss would happen. So you actually move from being present to being preferred on that level. And this is also the level that would involve more in-depth understandings is required of the cultural context and your target market. So here we are talking about values, customs, and traditions, and social norms, and everything. Everything we talked about culture earlier, the context and so on. So you need to have a broader pictures and the country history and so on. So that touch on not just on one's like marketing, but it's also touch on products and features and so on. One example I want to give you is IKEA in India. I did actually realize that both examples is India. I was pick and choose what will be in the talk and what will be in workshop and this webinar, so that I don't repeat them. So I want to talk about IKEA. So IKEA, a few years ago, they launched in India, but they took a long time to prepare for it because they knew India is very hard to get into, to get it right, to grow and so on. So they actually spent a lot of time looking into that. They actually sent out representatives, researchers, and product people out to more than 1,000 homes in Indian cities to understand how people lived and what they need. And of course, they can do the culturalizations, that the basic things that we talk about, right? But they know that it's not sufficient, right? So they make a lot more important local adaptations. So for example, they have their cabinets and countertops come at the lower heights because Indian populations tend to be shorter than the Western or European countries. And also they change their product line to accommodate the price-driven mentality that we talk about, and also to tailor the local taste and living context as well. Even their cafeteria actually caters for Indian tastes. So they have samosas and also vegetarian meatball, unlike the famous IKEA meatballs or Swedish meatball, they actually have the vegetarian ones, and they also have 1,000 available seats within in the cafeteria to accommodate the more leisurely dining style of Indian families. So you can see they did a lot of local adaptations to make it work, to make their operations, their products, and everything work. And to thrive in any market, that's why it's very important that cultural connections should touch on all aspects of the business, be it digital, physical, operations, content, products, and so on. So you know the saying of you take a whole village to raise a kid. It's actually take the whole business to collective efforts from various teams to actually within a business to actually grow a market globally. So regardless of what role you're playing or if you're in products teams, you need to actually know, actually be aware and kind of make the effort to actually connect with the other teams around in the organizations to make sure that actually you are aligned, to make sure that marketing is doing the right things to bring people in to your products and your products actually also resonate well so that actually all blend in together and connect very well together. And we talk about, and also in order to do that, the cultural data, cross-cultural data and insights is very important. You have to fit it in. Otherwise, you're just making decisions based on guessing or blind shots to make sure that you actually get it right and so on. So when it comes to cultural research and so on, you probably actually, as a product owners or managers and so on, you probably works a lot with the researchers, or sometimes you even do the research yourself. I know Teresa actually talk about a lot about discovery, right? You do your own research and so on. So when you do research, very often the ultimate goal is you want to know how you design your products. How do you actually, what features you need, what pricings you need, and so on. That was the end goal, right? But then, before that, you need to find to answer that questions. You need to understand the users' behaviors and their needs and mentalities and barriers and so on and so on. So that is a standard normal user research that you do. But when it comes to cross-cultural research, there's another layer. There's this cultural context that you need to know. The one that I talk about, we're not talking about just the economy and religion. Sometimes I go as far as the history because the history is actually going to shape how people mentality and in doing certain things, or even geography because the geography is actually going to influence people attitudes towards certain things and how they actually behave and certain and how that shape their behavior and mentality and so on. So it's very important to actually go backwards into what that means before you can answer that questions. So in a lot of times when companies trying to launch into new market or trying to grow further with their local markets, they have a very standard challenges that I can see here. So the first one, sometimes people might skip this because they actually have already decision made by the investors of the boards and so on. But sometimes it's very important to actually step back and say, how do we actually choose the right market to launch or to further growth to focus on next? And that's one key question as well. Or you actually want to think about what is the good product market fit. If we are very successful in Lisbon, for example, in Portugal, and then how do we actually create a good product market fit in other countries, for example, in Canada or in the Middle East and so on. It's not just like understanding the product market fit, but actually further than that. And how do problems that you're trying to solve using your products manifested in the different countries that you're actually going to launch. So that is one activity and one challenge that companies often actually work with them to kind of figure that out. And then once you actually figure that out, then you have what to do next. So we know this is the market, and what should we do next to make sure we actually got it right? So there's a scope and alignment where you need to make sure that within the organizations, how do we scope the what we need to do, and then how do we align within ourselves to make sure that we're actually going into the right direction together. And then the next thing is also work out what cultural aspects to look into, because there's so many things, right? We talk about history, we talk about these things, we talk about digital services and so digital infrastructure and so on. But where do we even start? How do we make sure that we don't miss anything that is important to that? And then once you figure that out, another step is also sometimes they come to me and say like, okay, how do we gather all these informations, right? All this cultural intelligence and nuances and so on. So it's about research, it's about how to set up the cultural insights team and so on. And then the next one is to set directions, to make decisions, to have a right strategy and so on. So if we talk about choosing the right market, so I have a framework that I use and a workshops that I work exercise that I do with companies when it comes to that. So, but essentially, this expansions strategy framework is in a high level sense, is talk about market potentials and effort. But within market potentials, there are a lot of things that within that as well. So you is that still there? So okay, I don't know what happened there. So let me just share again. Right. Okay. So, and then, so in market potentials that they have a lot of things that to consider. So for example, we'll talk about the populations, for example, or total addressable market and the economic of countries, the indicators and so on. So there are a few things within that bucket that we have to look into for each country that you have chosen for as a potential market to look into. And then you actually also want to look into the effort and the ease of market entry. How easy for you to acquire the market share, the time, the effort, and the cost that is needed for you to capture and retain customers. And again, there are a lot of elements within that you need to look into. And then you kind of look into the metrics, if you like. And then ideally, you want to find a market with high potential, with low effort, but a lot of time it doesn't work like that. So there's exercise that you can do to figure that out. And then we talk about product market fit, right? So you have a product here in this market and you want to launch in next market, you could just launch it and then just do some local adaptations that we talk about, payment methods and so on and so on. But then you also need to think about this, your products or propositions actually is fit into the cultural context of that market that you're looking into. So it's not just about standard product market fit anymore. So you need to look into the cultural elements, how they fit together, how they're actually going to connect. Even if it is the right products, how do you want to present them or surface them so that actually fit into that market as well? So that's much more than that you need to think about just to do the standard product market fit for any businesses. And then once you've done that, then have a scope and alignment as well. So I have a exercise, I call it very simple, 4 bucket exercise. That is very easy, very quickly to help you to bring clarity within the different stakeholders, different teams and organizations. And so to challenge biases, because as you know, stakeholders, especially the top ones, will always think, I know it all. I know this market and I know this is how they work and so on. But there are a lot of subjective views and also biases. So this exercise actually could challenge them and help them to see actually there might be a subjective view within what they actually believe in. And then this exercise also could help you to eliminate blind spots. And most importantly, it helps you to see what you know about a market or what you don't know about market, and it help you to kind of say, is there anything that you can make a decisions right now for your products, and then identify the things you need to find out and help you to shape your research and so on. So basically, it's just 4 buckets. It's easy, but this, if you actually come to my workshop, this will be one of the key parts that we actually use to see how we actually can use them to kind of create to run the workshop and also to create the output so you can see how it's actually being useful. But basically, it's 4 buckets. You can get the information, insights, questions, assumptions, facts, and everything into that. And then again, the benefits is actually quite multifold. So you'll be able to do actually a lot of things that use this to help you to get a lot of benefits and values out of that, like I said earlier. So this is 4 bucket exercise. It's actually one of the highlights or activities in the workshop. And then once you get that done, you figure it out and say everything like, okay, now this is the main questions I got a lot when I talk in conferences and everything. Like people saying like, how do I know what to look into? How do I know what cultural elements that we should look into for our domain, for our business? Because because some cultural elements is important for some companies, but not for the others. For example, once I was working with for two companies for Japan markets. One is for Spotify and one is for Asana, the tool management tools. I don't know, you know. Even though both are actually for the same market, Japan, but it's very different in terms of the cultural aspect we look into, right? Because one is more about the business context and how people interact when they work and so on. So the cultural context will be more different from the media use and services and things like that. So the question is, how do we figure that out? There's no easy answer to that because it's it's impossible for us to see actually what to touch into it. There's no answer to that. But what I actually managed to do is actually distill it into the key cultural aspect that could touch on any domains, and then you can use it to choose which one actually relevant to your market and also to your domain or your industry. So I have this culture activation toolkit. So there are 27, 28 of them. So it's kind of like, for example, this is card number 14. It's called digital infrastructure. So it's about we talk about the infrastructure of countries. Like, for example, we talk about South Korea. They have this digital infrastructure where it is so fast and so accessible. So what does that mean to your products? Especially if your product is related to that needs to use mobile data or online or services and so on. Or in the opposite way, you could actually look into, oh, Colombia, like, or South Africa. What are the digital infrastructure look like there? Is that going to influence what we do? Yeah, they actually have very expensive mobile data, so people care about what they do. And also there's very unreliable of the network as well. So what does that mean on the usage and so on? So this help you to kind of navigate them. So I have 27 cards of that. Again, this is the second bit of my workshop that we are going to use all these cards like games, but we have the cards to play around to say actually what kind of thing is actually relevant to your services or your domain, your products, and how do you use that to create informations to help you to define what that means, what kind of cultural elements that is important to you. So that would help you to identify the cultural elements so you don't miss anything, that you don't actually overlook anything that is important to your business, your products that you actually wasn't aware of about the culture or the market. So that is about that. So if you think about the flow that I had earlier, so it's, first of all, it's about choosing the right market, alignment and scoping, and then choosing the right cultural aspects. And then now it's about collecting the cultural intelligence and informations and insights and so on. So there are a lot, I'm not going to go into details on that, but there are a lot of approaches, a lot of approaches that you can use. Like here is the interview. Ethnography, you go to people's locations and contexts and ask them what they do. Participatory emotions is slightly different than than ethnography. Participatory emotion is more about, like, for example, here with Spotify in South Korea, we wanted to know how the hardcore fan K-pop fan actually do and what is important to them, their context. So we live in their world. So we're following them around to join every single thing they do. It was mind blowing. And then local emotions. So if you go to a market, don't just go to the lab and listen to the interviews on. Get yourself out to kind of immerse yourself to local context, to local markets, to see how people negotiate or haggle things and how people live and so on. But all this is kind of like, oh, being with the user and so on. But there are other things you can do as well. Sometimes you don't even go too far. Don't have to go too far. You can look into your data you have as well to see what actually you can pull out to help you to make certain decisions and so on. And this is one thing like people always say, oh yeah, research is I can just get the local a local agency to help me to do it with simultaneous translations, or even worse, local team will give me do the research and give me the output and so on. But actually, cross-cultural research is not as simple as that. You actually need to have distinct set of skills to properly know what to look into and also how to interpret the cultural context. And also the local teams, a lot of time they might have biases because as we know, we live in the environment we're familiar with. We sometimes don't even know how we are different or what is the reason we do certain things. We are so embedded in that context that we didn't even realize that. So sometimes I work with local teams and I was just like, oh, can you find out more about this? And they will kind of like, the local moderator was like, why this is how we do things? Why is it so curious about, why are you so curious about it? But it's so important. Actually, that piece of information is why it's important as a global perspective to kind of, this is so unique about this country. We can use this to actually differentiate what we do in our products and so on. So there are a lot of things. And throughout my careers, I've done a lot of things that not right when I do the research or I manage, and now I could do more coaching as well. So for example, these are some examples that things happened and you just have to, oh no, that is because we overlook certain things. I'm not going to go into details, but maybe in the talk I will give more details about these two, more content and so on, because I'm conscious about the time now. So yeah, there are a lot of things that is kind of like all these emotions. Indeed, I have them, but in order to kind of avoid that, it's kind of put together. That's why I actually wrote that book. Part of the book, first part is more strategic side, and then the second part is more practical as well. So to say what are the things that you need to be aware of, so that you actually don't make the mistake I make, so you don't have to go through all the pain and everything. Every single stage actually has little things that you need to figure it out as well. So that's why it's very important to actually have an efficient process and operation so that you know how to gather those informations you are in, even if you actually already also using AI powered research tools, this become bigger and bigger. You need to know what to do with them. What do you need to do with the output, the insights, and so on. So talking about AI, the other things that I'm thinking of as well is like how do actually could use AI to kind of help you to fit that? We all know AI actually have biases, stereotyping, and so on. And I did some experiments last year and published an articles about that, about how assuming a company want to launch in China or Saudi Arabia, we use ChatGPT and also Arabic LLMs and also Chinese LLMs, and we kind of figure out what are the insights or recommendations or tips you need to give us. And it was quite high level, and they keep saying like get the local companies or experts on. But what I was actually trying to figure out is, the cards that we talk about and the cultural context and so on, how do we actually have a simple way to kind of distill that? So I'm actually creating these tools as we go along and see how actually we can use that to do that. If you want to find out, it's early access, like signing up waiting list for now. So you can actually check it out. It's Get Market IQ. But this is kind of basically what I wanted to do is kind of help you put in your domain and the cultural insights, cultural aspects and so on, and then help you to actually figure out what might be relevant to you and also the confidence level and what does it mean to you as well. So you can actually talk to them and refine it, say, oh, you're talking about the prepaid plan. We actually already have that. So what does that mean and so on. So to wrap it up, I just wanted to emphasize that actually a great local adaptations actually normally don't stand out because they blend in so seamlessly into the experience that where your local audiences actually doesn't even realize it exists because they just know this is for me and it's just what we need and kind of use them. But believe me, if you actually didn't do it right or didn't do the local adaptation right, they will find out, they will know. For example, if they didn't use the dates format right on your website, you have month, date, and year, or date, month, and year, you got it wrong, and then someone used book the wrong flights, book the wrong tickets or something like that. They will get annoyed. But that is because of the confusing products or website and so on. They will talk about it, they will stop using it, or so on. And in this whole journey, like it's very, I think this is kind of no-brainer, but I just kind of feel like it's important to repeat that or to emphasize that. It's very important for us to be curious. And I think for a lot of us working in digital and products and the industry, we're actually quite often we're already curious. And we need to be open-minded, right? Like things that we don't are not familiar with doesn't mean that it's wrong. Or actually happy to be challenged, like what you believe in, and don't make decisions just very quickly, just properly understand that. So yeah, that is it. We still have a bit of time for Q&A, hopefully. Um, yeah. Any questions?
So I would actually have a question. If yeah, if you don't mind, Chui Chui, thank you so much for your presentation. Super insightful. Lots of very actionable tools at the end that people can use. My question is actually a little bit the other way around, which is um obviously some of the examples that you have shown are examples from Western companies that have moved to mostly Eastern or South American geographies. What we are seeing nowadays is that lots of mostly Eastern or even Chinese products and brands are becoming very successful in
Mm.
Western geographies. And this is something which is quite new. Probably, it never happened in our lifetimes. It's happening for the first time. For the first time, people are having these household names that are Chinese brands, TikTok, Chine, Temu, but also physical products, tech products like BYD or Huawei or even Lenovo, Xiaomi, etc. So, what do you think it's also being done right on the other side of the fence, so to say? And I know that you are also originally of Chinese background, ethnicity. So what do you think it's happening? Because this is a two-sided street, right? It's not just Western companies that want to go outside of the West and go elsewhere. It's also the other way around, right?
Yeah, it's definitely the case. Because part of the reason is because Chinese have comp Chinese have big populations and market, and they have done as much as possible within their market. So, for them to grow further, they need to go outside China. And Chinese history as well. They from the very if you look at the Chinese history, they are very strategic. Like all the history we read through 5,000 years ago or whatever, they are very strategic. So they know how to kind of go into that. I think one thing, not just China, but also Southeast Asia, but China specifically, their products are they are very innovative. I have to say, like there are a lot of things that people don't look into, and the features that they have, all the interactions they connect with their audiences and so on. It's very unique and different and more because they actually start with collectivist society, right? There's a lot of interactions and everything. So they make it very interactive, very closely connected and so on. So they become very interactive. That's why a lot of features that they provided is now actually being used in a lot of Western countries as well. I give an example, like Spotify what is not, and I don't think they plan to go into China, but there's one time we actually look into the Chinese but being a very innovative company, so that we decided to actually look into some Chinese audio streaming services to learn about their innovative, not just on the product side and features, which is blow minding. A lot of good things that actually we could use in terms of Spotify actually pick it up as well in the interactions within the fans and the artists and so on. But not just that, but also their pricing models their advertising models and everything is very unique and different. So I think there are a lot of things that Western world and Western companies could learn from the Asia market as well. And Grab, I talk about that they start off like Uber, like car riding, but then now they are also like Uber
Mhm.
food services, but they're also bank. They're also super apps. So there are a lot of things that they actually get into that.
By the way, super apps, and I don't want to monopolize. I know maybe other people have lots of questions. So,
I think
but
Joanna
this
have
is
one.
really,
Yeah.
really another question. But anyways, let's give someone else's the floor.
So Joanna, you have what is the limit to the changes that you should make in a product? Good question. So yeah, there's a fine line, right? Like there are certain things you certainly don't want to change. I think it's very important for a business to know and agree on what are the things that you actually agree as a business not to, like we stick to our identity, for example. This is what who we are, like we are a sustainable company. This is what we are, we want to actually seen to be the brand and so on. So there are certain elements that you need to be sure and say, no matter what, we are not going to change ourselves to meet into the local context or culture. If let's say it's so crushing the two examples like who you want it to be and you kind of like this is our principle and the market is so different from what you are, you might need to consider is it worthwhile for us to get into the market sometimes. That's a conversation I have sometimes with the board. Like, is that worthwhile to make that push that you actually not culturally connected to that? But in terms of the limit, apart from those like your principles and where you want to see and everything else, I think it's good for businesses or products owners or product teams to actually push as far as you can to make a case where that is needs to be, or how much you can change so that you actually meet them as much as possible as well. I don't know whether that answers your question, Jana. And
Yes,
otherwise we
yes.
can. Cool.
Thank you.
I can't see you. So Bruno's, you have what are the best resources for global user?
Is there
Uh,
one
I think so. You're talking about platform, right?
platform or service
So
or
I'm
other, if
I'm less
another
about,
resource?
yeah, I'm less of a platform. Well, the platform people might not. Unless you, I think these platforms are very good for certain things. Like for example, to test certain things, to have a survey done, or very small unmoderated user research and so on. But for me, cross-cultural is really important to get the insights, to have that direct communications and context with the users. So you can use this platform as a tools like using Zoom to talk to the users.
Yep.
But if you want a nitty-gritty explorative kind of insights, you probably want to do it in person or, recruit them, talk to them on Zoom or something and talk to them using that. It's more time consuming, but you could even sometimes go lower sample size and get better insights
Mhm.
using that. But then in terms of platforms, I think most of the platform has that features if you do unmoderated, but then it's more about your sample size and who you kind of recruit and so on. And this is, we're not even talking about AI powered research tools, right? Like
Right.
Outset, Wondering, and so on. Those, I know a lot of people saying, yep, you can do that. And they do translations. That is as far as they go. None of them actually do anything, the nitty gritty of how do we actually get into the context of survey. There are more things you actually need to localize than more than just translate the language and so on. Those tools actually not using that, providing that yet. So yeah, there's all still have limitations. The most they can provide is translations, and translation itself is not enough for you to get the
Mhm.
cultural context.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. That was really
Thank you.
insightful.
Thanks, Bruno. Someone, Isaac? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a question too. So obviously you've been talking about how important it is for companies to blend with, and match the culture of the market they're trying to get into. But from your experience, have you ever like come across that it's beneficial for the company maybe to not change their their product and their market as much because maybe like the company or the country they're trying to go into like views their product like their home country in a positive
Mm,
way and like they can benefit off that. Like for example, in America, I know like we view like Italian clothing brands or like maybe European clothing brands as more like fancy. So if they're trying to keep up that aesthetic, maybe like they don't. Have you ever seen that? Like if they don't try to change as much to try to play into that.
um, yes and no, but I think all successful countries I know of, they actually do change to a certain extent. It's just how much they change, right? So sometimes in certain markets, you want to be. So for example, a lot of international brands, one of the questions they ask is, do we want to seem very local, or actually being international brand is very useful? And in some contexts, actually presented as an international brand is very useful because there's a different perceptions in the locals in terms of how they view the international brands and so on. So in that instance, sure, there are certain elements you don't want to kind of change too much. But in the local experience, for example, we talk about the even the second level about the local adaptations. That is the basic you need to change, right? To give them the naming and the currency and so on. So you need to get that done. To I don't think any companies that I have know of and seen that do very, very well hasn't changed at all. Um, they do actually provide a bit more so that they actually stand out from the crowd a bit more. Because otherwise, everyone is doing the same thing, right? And you are just providing whatever people are, and that is just the basic. It would be worse if actually your things doesn't even match to what people like and want. So it's really hard to break that into the market. Um,
Cool, thank you.
thank you. I think Joel, you actually raised a hand earlier. Don't know, you
Yes.
disappeared. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you also for the presentation. I was wondering that we are witnessing now a rise of this global culture where everybody within certain Western zones understand each other jokes. They are on top of the same subjects, and everything becomes really boring because nothing is exotic anymore. Uh, from your experience, is this a trend that will continue? Will continue to
Mm.
fuse together these cultures and become like just the same everywhere? Boring?
To a certain extent. So I do believe, so for example, Gen Z or Alpha even, so they actually, you can see they actually share a lot of commonality in terms of their behaviors because of this whole social media and the whole international exposures they have. So we can see actually slightly they share more commonality than they used to be for our generations or the past generations on. However, I wouldn't say that it's going to be blend everyone's the same because there's the culture, there's so much culture aspects that it will take years or even centuries or sometimes not even change, to so I think the similarities overlap will be more obvious than used to be, but there will still be all the cultural differences and behaviors and so on that I don't think it will ever be different.
Thank you. Good to know.
This is my view, and I'm quite strongly believe that. Thank you. Thank you, Mamoria. Cool. Anyone, any questions?
Nobody has one. I have another.
Okay.
Under your experience, have you actually seen a product completely fail because of lack of adaptation to the market because of a complete cultural misfit? Like,
The easiest one come to my mind is the example I was going to give in the talk on Sephora, right? So the cosmetic products. So one of the things that they got wrong, it was products. So like in South Korea, they actually care more about overall beauty than makeups and so on. So cosmetic products is less than beauty products. Sorry, the other way around. And then not only that, the even the makeups, if you look at K-pops and everyone, they are very bold and natural look. Like you looks like you did not really make up put them. But Sephora's actually got it wrong. They have bold colors and cosmetic, bright lipstick and things like that. So yeah, so it's kind of like mismatch of products that people want. That is more about the local, the physical products examples. But yeah, I think I want to think about the I think for the digital side as well, like a lot of times, it's either the products you provided or actually the features that you provided. There are different layers when you work on products, right? So I'm trying to think about what digital products that you have. I'm sure you guys have a lot of examples, just like getting hot and tired. Yeah, I am sure like a lot of brands that we know of, even even like Airbnb and they actually or Google, they sometimes have the products that they actually created. This actually doesn't match into the local connections. Yeah, if something come out, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think it's basically just yeah, I think we're just over time, so we might just wrap it up.
I hope I see you guys in the conference one way or another. Come to my workshop or not, but hopefully see you there and come and say hi if you are there as well.
Thank you, Chui Chui.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye-bye,
nice
Chi.
Bye.
day.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
Chui Chui.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.